Good morning and welcome back into the studio. Today we're going to do a little Technique Tuesday and we're going to test out the watercolor alcohol or alcohol watercolor technique that I did on watercolor paper last time. We're going to test it out on a gel plate. And see if it actually works. So we're gonna do some testing here and see if this is workable in the form of nothing moves, nothing bleeds, or we're just gonna test it out and see what happens. So I got my 6x6 gel press plate. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down my watercolors and then spritz it with alcohol and let that dry, and then come in with paint and do a pull. So I think that's the order for this first one that I'm gonna go in. So I'm gonna and I'm not gonna use any, for this first few trials, I'm not gonna use any stencils. So I've got this Ken Oliver liquid watercolor in Sepia, and I'm just gonna get all over. And I have some in burnt orange. I don't know if you're supposed to shake these or not, but I always do and always forget. So we'll see if they react. Now, when I did this kind of a trial, the first time I tried this on paper, the watercolors, when the alcohol hit it, the watercolors became like a jelly substance. I think I'm going to go in with a little turquoise as well. Kind of spice it up a little bit, and we'll go from there. All right, so I have my isopropyl alcohol in a spritz bottle. It's just how I keep it. So we're gonna see, so it's moving it, that's good. I can see that it is it's moving it and then it's thickening it up like it did before. Play together with hopefully not getting it too muddy, because you know these colors are going to mudify. I should have thought about that. All right, so what I'm going to do, oh, we had some pink over here. I am going to let this dry on the plate, and then I will be back once it's dried, and we will put down some acrylic paint, see if we get any bleed through, see how this watercolor alcohol mixture, how it responds to this process. So I'll be right back. Okay, I have the patience of a gnat. I kind of played with it. So I'm gonna go in with acrylic white paint as gently as I can, and we'll see. I'm gonna just put it over here and brayer it on so it's not as thick. Oh yeah, Nina, not as thick, not as heavy. So let's try and get this thinned out a bit. And yeah, see, I got a lot on my brayer. Let's see if that's too thin or just right. And I'm just putting this on scrap paper, nothing major.
If I should be the one
Very interesting. It's kind of got a very, well, it kind of looks like alcohol ink, but at the same time, it looks like watercolor. Although the colors are much more muted, and that's because of the white paint. And we do have some lift-off happening here. It'd be interesting to see, actually, let's try it right now. I'm gonna use a little gel medium with my finger and see if I can get this to lay down without getting, yeah, it's reacting just like watercolor. Huh. So the alcohol really, I think what the alcohol did on the first time I tried this, not with the gel plate, but on paper with stencils, was the alcohol got absorbed more into the paper, and I think that's what kept it from bleeding like a normal, or reactivating like regular watercolors. But this doesn't get that opportunity because we have the paint between the paper and the gel, and really the alcohol all dried right off. So that leads me to ask the question, what happens if we pull a print while it's still wet? Let's try that out. I'm going to actually, because I don't want, maybe it's up enough. I was gonna pull another, put some white down again and pull another print to try and get some of that paint off, but I'm gonna leave it because what we really want is it to absorb into the paper. So let's see how that does. So let's try some colors that behave well together this time. This is Merlot, and I am going to use a little bit Alizarin Crimson for brightness on the outskirts here, and a little Prussian. Okay, and now our alcohol. I'll try and get this administered less gloppily. Yeah, that's not happening. You see how it kind of gets like jelly almost? It's hard, it doesn't move like a regular water would, but we might get some, it might be more like of a smush effect. I don't know what the gel plate is actually doing at this point, but we'll see, because you could just do that on plastic, I think. Now this is just regular paper, so it's really gonna bleed through. But we are gonna get that alcohol absorbing into the paper with the color. We might get a few prints off of this. Just because this is just regular copy paper, and I'm almost positive this would work with watercolor paper because it did work last time doing that method. Now it'll be interesting to let these dry and see if we still get the fixation that the alcohol provided to the watercolor last time. So I'm gonna put these aside. I didn't set myself up for a drying station yet. That would have been a good idea. Okay, so my next thought is using watercolor in a gel medium on the plate. So I am gonna put down a glop of gel medium. This probably, I don't know, I'm not gonna say anything because we don't know anything yet at this point, really. I'm just making guesses. I'm gonna get that moved around, and then pretty quickly I'm gonna use some turquoise and some Alizarin crimson. And you know what? Let's just make a chemical mashup. Ooh, look at that. I didn't really think this one out, really. Because that gel medium is probably dried already. What I really wanted to do was sandwich it between the alcohol and the gel. Because I don't think, oh, maybe it is going to stay wet for us with that alcohol in there. Now, do we let it dry, or do we try and take a print off of that? It's awfully wet. Let's let it dry, and I'll be back. Would you find out with me? All right, so I've let that dry. Isn't this interesting? So remember, we have underneath we have gel medium was first, and then we had our watercolor, and then we added our alcohol. Okay, so I'm labeling this. So my thought was, so we have that gel medium below, that would help keep it from being, even if we didn't add the alcohol and just added the watercolor, that would help it from not moving after the fact. But then I was thinking, how am I gonna put my gel medium on top without getting some kind of movement? And then it dawned on me, what if I put gel medium directly on my paper and then apply the paper to the surface and give it a good long period of burnishing? So I'm going to apply my gel medium. I may have gotten a little carried away there. And then, oops, brayer it out like I would my paint on my plate. And then add my paper with the gel medium on it to the plate. All right, this is a true test. Now this bleed through was already on here from carryover from the last one. And I'm gonna kind of do this until it feels like it's not so wet, because I can definitely feel the moisture. You can see some of that. I may have gotten that gel medium a little thick. If we search the pieces, we dare. Oh my. Oh ho ho ho. And it looks like we're gonna get a ghost print off of this as well. Whether or not this will remove on us when we get it wet or add other things to it, but look at that. That is gorgeous. You can really see how the watercolor moved into the texture that the original gel medium on the bottom did. So this will be our ghost print. Oh, yes. I don't want to wait too much longer than what I just did, because this is a little more challenging to get up off of the plate. But look at that. And that is a ghost of that. Wow. Okay. So let this dry, and then we'll test and see if it becomes movable again, because we know we are working with watercolor. All right, so now I think it's time. This method might be the method. So now it might be time to introduce a stencil. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put some matte gel medium down onto the plate. And get that moved around. Oh, look, see, it's moving again. But okay, we're not gonna worry about that. We'll get to that point here. Okay, so now we're gonna add our watercolors. We're gonna go with Merlot. And some Indigo. And I am gonna go with some burnt orange, but I'm gonna try and keep it away from the Indigo and closer to the Merlot. We'll see how that works with after we add this alcohol to it. But we are going to add, and this is a Joggles stencil called Sturdy Mask, Square Study Mask. It's a Elizabeth St. Hilaire stencil. I'm gonna add that, and then I'm gonna add the alcohol. Yeah, keeping the blue away from the orange, you know. Like how I'm doing that? Okay. All right, we're gonna let that dry. That's gonna take a hot minute to dry because I just alcoholed that one right up. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I am gonna actually come in and add a little watercolor on top. I don't know if it's gonna move very well because I did not have much success with it moving when we did the other thing, the other tester. What did I do with my Indigo? There it is. But we'll see how that, ooh, that's interesting. Okay, we're gonna let that dry and we'll do the same thing. Put the gel medium on the paper and pull it up afterwards. With one another. Okay, I think that's about dry. We'll see how it is under the stencil. We might have to let it dry some more. But I wanted to say is that if you didn't get an opportunity to see my first playing with the watercolors and the alcohol, I'm gonna put a link up in the upper right-hand corner for you to hop over there and see what I did on watercolor paper the first time. So obviously this definitely needs to dry some more, but let's do a little, get some of that goodness onto a piece of paper from the stencil. And I'm gonna let this dry further and go wash my stencil, but I will be back. Okay, I think this is about ready. I am going to get some matte gel medium down on my paper.
You ever wonder if we know what
That is lovely. Not much of a ghost print left, but some up in this area that we can try and grab. But look at that. So that's that same sandwich. It is gel medium. Then we added the liquid watercolors. And then we added the alcohol. And then we pulled it with gel medium on the paper. So it's that same sandwich. And oh, we added a stencil in here. That was the difference. And then let it dry. So let's pull a ghost print off of this. A little bit, not a lot. But anyhow, ooh, that's kind of cool looking. Anyhow, let's pull these back out and test them for solubility. Okay, so this one we're pretty sure is going to move because it has paint on the back, and we already saw how this kind of moved. But I'm just gonna get my finger wet, and yep, in fact, we do still move. So we did not reverse the effects of the solubility of the watercolor with the watercolor, alcohol, and an acrylic paint to pull it up with. We did not. So then let's try, this was the next one we did. This is the gel medium watercolor and alcohol, and then gel medium on top. This is pretty dry. We're getting a little bleeding, but not much. I wonder if I used more gel medium on top, if that would, it does slow it down though. But look at that effect, that's pretty cool. And then this is the ghost print, and we're getting more off the ghost print. Isn't that interesting? I wonder if that has to do with how much, because I lowered the amount of gel medium I used on top. So that's interesting. But either way, we got some pretty awesome prints from this technique. So I suggest you get out and your gel plates and some watercolors and your isopropyl alcohol and gel medium, and even the acrylic paint if you don't mind the fact that it's gonna move. You can always spray this with a sealer, and it will spray sealer only. Thin coats. Thin coat, let it dry, thin coat, let it dry, thin coat, and it'll keep your watercolor from moving as much. Now these aren't really that much of an issue because we've got so little bleed. For watercolor, this is really awesome. But you can also seal it like I talked about with this one. And then you won't have any bleed at all. But I really highly recommend getting your gel plates out and playing with your watercolors and finding out how the interesting pulls that you can get from your isopropyl alcohol and liquid watercolor gel plate prints. Thank you again for coming along. If you've enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to my channel.